Since the beginning of my entrepreneurial and entrepreneurship journey, I've always been really good at making money. I never really been that good at keeping money or multiplying that money. For that reason, I have found myself with large sums of money at one time and at other times no money or even deep in the hole. I want to share three of the lessons that I've learned from having a lot of money, losing it all, having a lot of money, losing it all, and some of the things that I'm going to do in the future going forward in order to prevent this from happening. So I document pretty much each one of my years. I normally give each year a theme, a way in which I'm going to attack the year, a way in which I'm going to frame the actions that I'm going to take that year. So I was going through notebooks of mine from the last couple of years and my journal entries, the things I've learned, the things I picked up on. And I've really broken down the three main things that I've learned from having large sums of money and losing it all. I'm going to reference the notebook directly just so I don't miss any point that I'm looking to make. So the first point that I have here, or the first lesson that I learned from having a large sum of money and losing it all, is you can't outwork poor spending habits. This is something that I believe that I could do, especially at the time. When I would make a poor purchasing decision or make a poor investment in an advertisement, an influencer, so on and so forth, I believe that I could just outwork any of the poor spending habits or any of the poor decisions that I made in business. And I found that to be increasingly more exhausting, because the more you adopt that mindset that I can just outwork whatever mistakes that I make or whatever poor spending habits that I have, I ended up with a lot of work and nothing to show for it, because I believe that I can just outwork any of the poor spending habits that I had. Like, especially when I first started making money and I started going out to nightclubs, going out to expensive dinners, purchasing cars that I really couldn't afford, but I can afford the monthly payment, but I really couldn't afford the car. I started to make more and more of these purchases because I rationalized it with my work ethic. Well, I know that I can work hard. I know that I can produce money. But if you keep making decisions, or when I kept making decisions from that frame, I found myself at the end of all of my hard work, I really didn't have a whole lot to show for it, because I spent it believing that I can just make it again. I can make it again, which was true. I spent it and made it again. I spent it and made it again until it's not, until something goes wrong, until an advertisement doesn't convert that the way that you think it will, until a couple of deals fall through, until you get chargebacks on your merchant account and they shut down your merchant account, and then you can't even process payments anymore. So you believe you can outwork your poor spending habits, and you're right. And I was right until I wasn't. And when I'm not, and when I wasn't, that's when catastrophe came about, where I started to find myself in large sums of debt to service the lifestyle, the purchases that I made with work ethic that I was depending on in the future. Because there's no guarantee I would be able to work as hard as I was working at the time. But in my brain, in my head, I rationalized all of my poor spending by thinking I can just outwork it. So that was the first thing. You cannot outwork poor spending habits. Lesson number two is you already make enough money. What I mean by this is every time I hit another income threshold, all I thought is I need to make more money. I don't make enough money. I don't make enough money. But the reason I believe that is because I was looking through the eyes of consumption. I already had enough money to handle all of my basic needs and basic necessities. I was looking at money through the lens of consumption and consumption only. I didn't have enough money to consume these things that they told me that I should want or that I should have. When in reality, I've always made more than enough to take care of my basic necessities and take care of my education, learn more. Educating hasn't cost me a whole lot. I spend most of my money, or most of my expendable income, on education in the form of books, courses, and they're really not that expensive. You can buy, I buy all my books from thrift books, secondhand. You can get, sometimes I'll order 10, 20, 30 different books and only spend $100 or $200. So I always have enough money. You already make enough money. That doesn't mean you should not strive to make more, but when you're constantly inflating your lifestyle at every step or every income, every level of income. For example, I was talking about this the other day. If you have two people, one making $3,000 a month with $3,000 in expenses each month, and another person who makes $100,000 a month and they have $100,000 in expenses, they're in the same position at the end of each month. Just because you make more money doesn't necessarily mean you're better off. Now, you could be if you adjust your spending habits, and that kind of goes back into point one, just adjusting your spending habits. Like, the things that I want now are much different than the things that I wanted when I first started out. The things that I wanted when I first started out were pretty much all material. Nowadays, that's changed for me. So you already made enough money. When I made $3,000 a month, when I made $10,000 a month, when I made $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month, I always already made enough money. That doesn't mean I shouldn't have strove, or I shouldn't strive to increase my income. By no means. Not. I'm just saying I shouldn't increase my spending habits at each level of income, which kind of ties back into point number one. And then point number three, the third thing that I learned, is spending does not demonstrate affluence. It demonstrates lack of constraint. When I got a hold of some money the first time, the first thing I could think of was spending it. I thought that in order to demonstrate affluence, I had to consume. But in reality, that's not the case. For the most part, the people that consume the most have the least to cope with the fact that they don't own anything. I think it was Dave Chappelle. He has a quote that I love: "When you don't own land, you own brands." I believe that if I own a nice enough car, if I own enough nice clothes, if I spent enough money, I can demonstrate the fact that I'm affluent. But in reality, that had nothing to do with it. What I really should have been doing with my money is investing it for the long term, planning. So spending does not demonstrate affluence, and especially in the social media age. People believe the guy who spends the most on his car, on his watch, how much is your watch, bro? How much is your car? Now, all that stuff is really important, but it's really not, at least not to me. It doesn't demonstrate affluence. The more people that I've been able to connect with who have high net worths or who have high incomes, you realize they don't consume as much as the person who makes 10% of what they make. They're putting away most of their money. They're investing most of their money. They're not looking to put it back in the hands of the people in power as soon as they touch the money. And that's what I did. That was a mistake that I made. Now, I am so glad I made this mistake by the time I was 23 and not 43, because you got dudes in their 40s who are spending their last dime to look cool at the club, at the nightclub, at the strip club, spending their last dime to look cool on a designer shirt or designer belt, or throwing their money in the air to make it seem like they're affluent, but in reality, they're not. So I'm so glad it didn't take me being a 40-year-old man to learn these lessons, especially the last lesson, because it takes people a long time. And most of the time, they're just coping with the fact that they don't own anything and they don't control anything. So affluence and consumption have no correlation, at least from the things that I have seen. Just because I spent a lot of money, it didn't mean that I was making a lot of money or that I was keeping it. And the most important thing is keeping it and not increasing your lifestyle at every step of the income bracket. Keeping things modest until you truly, truly have enough money to splurge in the manner in which you want, then that's fine. But having your emergency fund set up, having investments already yielding out 10%, 5%, however much it is for you each year, to me, that means a lot more than flexing at a club with a Louis Vuitton bag or whatever designer or whatever status symbol that we're using to signal the fact that we have money, when a lot of people who are using those signals, in fact, don't have money. So those are the three things that I've learned from having large sums of money and losing those large sums of money. And this is something that's happened to me multiple times. At the age of 26 now, I'm much more equipped to deal with either small amounts of money or large amounts of money. Because like I said in point two, you already make enough money. You already make enough money, especially if you're a single guy or you have two people in a household and you guys both work. Pay down your debts, live below your means, educate yourself so you can get to that level of income to where you can spend however you want. I mean, that's what I'm currently doing right now. I'm educating myself and learning more about the game of business and investment so I can get to the next level and spend the kind of money or get the kind of things that I want without it impacting my financial situation so drastically if I have one or two bad months. That is or a position I put myself in way too many times, where if I have one bad week or one bad month, my whole financial situation comes crashing down. And that's because I was increasing my lifestyle and increasing lifestyle inflation, I think is what they call it, at every step of income. So when I hit $3,000 a month, go get an apartment. When I hit $10,000 a month, go get a BMW, $20,000 a month, and so on and so forth. And in reality, none of that is necessary, because what I found in my short 26 years of being here is no one cares. The watch on your wrist, no one really cares. The car that you're driving, no one really cares. And the people that do care, they're likely not the people that I should be around. And this is something that I've had to learn the hard way, but I'm so glad I learned it at the age of 26 or by the age of 26 rather than my 40s. But those are the three lessons that I learned from having large sums of money and losing them all.